Film look in a 5D Mark II and how to get it. First off, I have to say that I am not a professional. Probably not the best way to start off a video, but I think it's best to leave this sign at the door. Everything I've learned has been through making mistakes and learning from them. So if I start making incorrect terms, you know why. So first off, what is the film look? What is the look that we no-budget filmmakers sought after? It's the imagery we associate with cinema, the texture and the feel of film we see on the big screen. You may have the worst actors in the world and have the worst writing in the world, but you know there's some satisfaction if the picture looks good. But how do you get that look? A lot of new guys believe it's the fast prime lens that has a wide aperture. Why? Because it allows for a shallow depth of field, knocks everything in the background out of focus, and it gives you that cinematic look. However, take a look at some of your favourite films and have a look at how many scenes actually have a shallow depth of field. Not many. The only time I ever really see this shallow depth of field is when the director really wants us to focus on a certain aspect of the frame and not look anywhere else. So what makes footage look filmic? The answer isn't a better lens or better camera, although that does obviously help. It's everything. The camera movement, lighting, set design, costume, makeup, locations, grading, everything. You can't just buy a lens and expect it to make your films look filmic. However, not everyone can afford these things, and as always, us DIY filmmakers are working with a minimal, if not absolute, budget. So we'll be taking a look on how to achieve this film look with the 5D Mark II, using grading, lighting, aspect ratios, and some lens properties. We'll take this clip, only a few seconds long, from a shoot that I was working on in summer 2011. To get the filmic motion, you will need to be filming at 24 frames per second, and have your camera at a 180-degree shutter. I'll include a link on what this is and what this means, but essentially you need your camera shutter to be at 1/48th of a second. However, that is an option. You can take it up to 1/50th of a second. Then you may be thinking, hang on, the background is quite dropped out. Didn't you say not to do that? Well, yes, but with this shot, I really wanted the audience to be solely focused on either. I didn't want the audience to be looking at the tall grass, and a close-up wouldn't work for what we were trying to convey. So we gave the shot a shallow depth of field. So first off, only using basic tools, we're going to color correct, not color grade. Grading is altering and enhancing the color for artistic and creative purposes. Color correcting is more of a technical approach, where you balance your images, make sure the blacks are black, the whites are white, and you have a properly exposed shot, and so on. So we're going to be using this, the waveform and the RGB, right? And we're first off, we're going to drag some RGB curves over. And we're going to change this to the waveform first. Now what we got here, the top represents, this is the 7.5 IRE. You don't really need to use that. A lot of people say you need to. But the bottom represents the blacks. This is where your blacks want to be, and the tops want to be where you want your whites to be. Now you may notice that there's like a flat line at the top. That's because there are some blown highlights in the image, and that's a common part of owning a 5D is not having the dynamic range. And you'll find when you're trying to film, highlights will be blown out in windows or whatnot, and you're going to need an excess amount of lighting to make sure that doesn't happen. Of course, we don't have that. So now you see the shadows are black, maybe a little bit too black for what we're trying to do. There we go, that looks better. So you go, the blacks are sitting all along the bottom. And now we're going to go over to the RGB parade, which is red, green, and blue. And we want everything to be equal. Let's just notch that down. There we go, that looks okay. Do the same with the green. And with the blue. Kind of want them all to look the same. Now if we go back to have a look at a video. And there we go. We have a nicely exposed shot. It's maybe a little bit too red. So if we take some of the red out of it. There we go. Now that is more or less what we've seen on the day. What the actual actor and the location look like. Again, you can see those highlights blown out there in the back, but there's not a lot we can do with that. That just comes with having the 5D, and that's what it looks like before and after. So you can see we've made a big difference, and this is just color correcting. So now, I'm a big fan of Darren Aronofsky's work within The Rest and The Black Swan and other films like say Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, because of the natural look. It's not heavily stylized. Most of the time natural lighting is used, and it gives much more a connectable approach than say a scene where you can tell there's a big 2K Arri light behind the camera. While lights were available to us, all we used was a reflector, and we had the gold side of the reflector used, as this was important for the grade later. And the reflector gave us a good fill in her face, not too bright, not too dim, noticeable when not there, and unnoticeable on screen. You can get these reflectors for $50, and they really make a difference to your production. It can be distracting if half your actor's face is dark from a shadow, and even in the most simple of scenes, there's usually someone holding a piece of foam core to gently light the actor's face to give it that even look. Alright, let's move on and look at ratios and how a different ratio can help make your project more cinematic. So with the 5D, depending on what format you're shooting in, you should be shooting in 1920 by 1080p. That gives you a 16:9 ratio. It's not really cinematic. So how do we get to a cinematic ratio? Well, you either shoot in a very expensive anamorphic lens, or we crop the footage. There's a few aspect ratios out there, but the one we're going to look at is Cinescope, the numbers you're seeing on the screen. Now you can adjust your properties of the project to get this ratio by dividing 1920 by 2.35, and you get 817. So your project will be 1920 by 817, and you get this type of look. Now, as you can see, it's very cinematic. It looks a lot wider. It's got that widescreen approach. However, you're not really sure what you're working in, and it could be quite a hassle trying to frame up your shot. So another method is by using an overlay. Now, if you add an adjustment layer, go into the effects. Now, to download this preset, the link is at the bottom in the description from Video Copilot, and this adds the black bars onto your project. Essentially, this is what your project would have looked like when uploaded to YouTube. However, you get to see it now, and you know what you're working with, you know where your actors are going to be. The black bars might have been a little bit different if you exported it at different ratios, but you know, with this you can export it at 1920 by 1080, and you know what you're doing, you know what you're seeing. So what else can we do? So we're doing a tutorial on the film look. Well, let's give it some film. There's various sites and plugins such as Film Convert Pro you can use, but of course they all cost money, and we don't have money, so let's find some free examples. Film Grain has a 35mm film, which is fantastic, and you get that free if you sign up to their site. So stick this onto your timeline and change the blending mode to overlay. Turn the opacity down to, you know, around about 67% or so, and some people usually crank it down to 25-30, but I really like that feel when you can see the grain, you can see like the little fag ash, as we call it in the UK, or cigarette ash, and you can see that on the screen, and it gives it the filmic look, as it is film. And as a side note, you might want to have you probably will have a longer clip than I'm using. So go to your project files, right click, interpret main, and press go down to the loop, and just stick a big old number in there and drag this sucker out. Now, I won't go into grading. As I said, it's an artistic preference, and each story calls for a different tone. In this, we're in quite a hot place, so I wanted to give it that warm African feel. It may be best as well to lower your saturation down to like 80% if you are going to use the film grain. And to top it off, I've added Twixter to heighten the ordeal for the character, and the moment it's dragging out in her head, and it feels like forever. Every moment may be her last, so I wanted the audience to see these moments. And I've also added some CG dust particles from the plant around her.